in shot?
Are you in shot there?
He's in shot now. Stick will make sure he's in shot. What are we going to call our band? New name for our band?
Minge.
Flip Flop Suicide. Big Shot.
Big Shot.
Big Shot. That's not a
Big
bad
Shot.
name, is it?
Hello, we're Big Shot, and this is a tune by Led Zeppelin. Greetings! I'm Rob Chappers.
And I'm the captain.
And we're at Andertons.
We certainly are.
About to review some absolutely fantastic guitars by Fender. This is one of my nice favourite new guitars of all time in the entire world.
Smell the wind.
Classic vibe time.
Yeah, we've got a couple of new guitars that Squier released at the beginning of 2011. If you're not familiar with the Squier Classic Vibe series, I guess that it does exactly what the name suggests. These are Squier guitars designed with a classic vibe. So we've got the really iconic, probably the most iconic Telecaster design ever, which was the butterscotch blonde telly with the black scratch plate. And over here I've got a 50's Strat in Fiesta Red, and the reason this is iconic is rumour has it, or legend has it, that the very first Fender guitar to ever come to the UK was a Strat that Cliff Richard bought for Hank Marvin, and it was a Fiesta Red one, first one ever to come over to the UK, and that's why this colour's been sort of synonymous with Fender in the UK ever since.
Fiesta. So let's just start with some nice clean tones for you. I'm going to try a bit of John Mayer because Lee introduced me to John Mayer recently. I was mayonnaised at the incredible.
Still works.
It still works.
I still find it funny.
It was funny. I was mayonnaised by how good John Mayer is, and yeah.
Beautiful.
If only I could play like him, I'd be a lot happier. Probably have more women and money. It's got all the classic sounds, really, hasn't it? Here's the bridge posizione.
A lot of people often wonder, you know, why if you look at a Telecaster, you go, well, it's got a couple of single coil pickups on it. Why does a Telecaster sound different to a Strat in its bridge position?
Why does it sound different to Strat in its bridge position?
And it's basically because of the sort of bridge design. On a Telecaster, the guitar's strung through the body, and it uses quite substantially weightier, chunkier saddles, particularly on the vintage models, and I'll talk a little bit about the brass vintage saddles here. And it's all enclosed in this ashtray style bridge design. Well, they call it an ashtray design, I guess, because it just looks like a cheap ashtray, I suppose. But what it does is it gives the Telecaster a bit more bite and a bit more output. And I'm a huge fan. My first ever guitar was a Strat, and I always thought of the Telecaster maybe as a, I don't know, like a poor man's alternative to a Strat or something like that. But actually, when you own one and you realise that you haven't got tuning problems because of a tremolo system, you've got this ballsy kind of bridge pickup sound, and you realise that actually a Telecaster is absolutely in its own right a kind of a fantastic guitar to
It's
own.
a workhorse of a machine, isn't it, really? I mean, everything about this is just simplicity and power. They've done a couple of little mods, like Lee was saying. The knobs here are, I think, a little bit smaller and knurled, so easier to grasp, which means that the control, the flick switch here, the three-way, is slightly further away from the volume knob, which is a really nice thing, because I've sometimes found they're a bit too close.
Yeah.
These little saddles now have kind of guidance grooves. Is that a real thing? A guidance groove?
Could be.
So that the string doesn't slip over the saddle.
Yeah. And these, if you look at a more modern Telecaster, these three, the big brass bridges, which are correct, you know, that is how a 50s Telecaster would have been made. But over the years, these got replaced by 6 individual saddles. And some people will argue that you can actually get the intonation more accurate on the 6 individual ones. Personally, I think if these are set up properly, then there's no intonation problem. But you definitely, these chunkier, fatter brass bridge saddles just give a little bit more zing than you'd get out of a modern.
They give
Tele.
you more top end on the open strings,
Yeah.
for sure. That's a fact. In fact, if I bought this, and I probably will, I would put a brass nut on it as well and get brass both
Maximum
ends.
Zing.
While we're talking about the neck, because I am now, it's a nice thin C, and for me that's just a +1 to this guitar. So many Tellies have really chunky necks, and I much prefer the thinner necks. This is a nice thin C. It's got medium jumbo frets, and it's got my personal favourite tuner of all time, which is what I think is called the F-type tuner, where you just poke a string down a hole, bend it, and then wrap it around. If you know what they're really called, tell me in the comment section below.
Classic vintage style. The neck is lacquered on here. If you've never played a lacquered neck guitar, what it does is it's a different feel, isn't it? I mean, some people find perhaps when your hands sweat, it's a tiny bit maybe stickier than a matte finish. But what it does on the vintage ones is it just adds some glassy kind of top end again to the sound, so you get this really lovely, you know, classic Fender tone.
It looks badass, dude, doesn't it?
Yeah, again, I quite like this. One of the things on Classic Vibe, even though it's made to look like it's old, Fender aren't worried about using perhaps a feature from a modern guitar if they think it's better. So Chappers just talked about the medium jumbo frets. Again, on a vintage version of this, it would have the skinnier frets, but things like string bends are much easier on fatter frets, so they've gone over to the fatter frets.
Yeah,
on
the
here.
radius is a lot flatter too. This isn't the really, really vintage, very round radius. And the last thing,
Yes.
which is very cool, is this is made from pine.
Yeah.
That's a very old school thing to do. Guitar manufacturers used pine years ago, and it's very lightweight. I mean, it's practically helium.
And I must admit, what I really think Fender have done brilliantly here, the American version of this would be made from ash or swamp ash. And ash is a beautifully figured wood. It's got a much more pronounced grain than alder has. So I always think when it's a see-through finish, ash looks beautiful. But it's quite an expensive timber, and it's not something normally you'd associate with a guitar that sells for this price.
Yeah, but this looks like ash.
It does look.
You wouldn't
the
know.
pine genuinely does just look like ash.
This
so.
is an opportune moment for a sweep over. Bing!
And and we haven't told you the price.
No.
And the best thing of all about the price as well. which
If you read the price upside down, it says, "Ooh, Lee."
see, totally coincidentally. So
We're not going to do that joke though.
No, so it's £337, or at least in May 2011, that's what it was. But always, as always, on all of our videos, do go check Anderton's website for the latest price.
£337, Great British Pounds,
Yeah.
GBP, not weight, but money.
So, I mean, which is amazing, really, again. And
Yeah.
the whole Squier classic vibe thing, if you're worried, maybe, you know, you've seen a Squier, like, you know, the kind of guitar that you might buy from a supermarket to learn to play on, and you think, oh, Squier, I don't remember that being very good. Classic vibe is the top of the line Squier
Trust me,
range.
this is good. I'm probably going to buy this actual guitar right now.
I would genuinely question whether or not you could tell the difference between something like Squier Classic Vibe, and in terms of build quality, that is, and a similarly priced Fender, or even a Fender that was a tiny bit dearer. These really are spectacularly well made. More useless trivia?
Useless trivia.
Useless
We're
trivia.
all full of that, aren't we?
If you ever play a no-caster, Fender no-caster, and a lot of people say, well, why is it called a no-caster? And I'll just quickly tell you that as well. The very first the very first guitar of this shape that Fender did, I think, was the Squier. And then when the two pickup version came out, before it was called a Telecaster, it was called a Broadcaster. And Fred Gretsch of the Gretsch Musical Instrument Company said, you can't call it a Broadcaster because I make a drum kit called a Broadcaster. So for a period of time, sort of 6 months to a year, it didn't have a name, so it became known as the No-Caster.
I didn't know that.
And then it became the Telecaster. But anyway,
Is that because televisions were invented?
I don't know really.
We call this the iPodcaster.
It could be. The No-Casters have a capacitor on the bridge pickup to roll all the treble off. So when I first tried a No-Caster, I hear this very, very dull sort of sound, and I phone up Fender and I say, I've got a faulty guitar here. I'd send it back, and they went, no, it's not faulty. This is how it used to be. I said, well, why would someone want a guitar like that? And of course, what you got to remember is when this first came out, there was no such thing as an electric bass guitar. So you'd have two guys in a band. One would be essentially playing like a bass part on this neck pickup with all the treble rolled off, and one would be playing the sort of melody or whatever on the traditional one. There you are, useless trivia. Yeah, that's how they all played bass in the 50s. Do you want to do any more about that, or do you want to talk about the
Well, I want to
Fiesta
do this
Red one
all day long because this is just such a nice guitar. Look at it. Look at that. It's like sex made of wood. Sex on wood!
Is that a Kings of Leon song?
That's that Kings of
Sex
Leon
made
song.
of wood.
Yeah, sex made of
now?
wood.
You get splinters.
Moving swiftly on to this Stratocaster.
Okay, cool.
Fiesta!
This is basically the same idea. This is this one here is actually an alder body, so same timber that you'd get if you bought an American Fender Strat. But basically, again, sort of classic 50s vibe. So we've got some sort of vintage voiced single coil pickups on here. We've got a traditional style trem system. Again, a C-shaped neck, which I guess arguably, if you had a
Same as
real,
the Tele, yeah.
Yeah, if you had a real 50s Strat, you'd probably find it was a slightly chunkier neck with a slightly more sort of V profile on it, but this is a more of like a C style modern Strat. But again, we got the Chappers' favourite machine heads,
Yeah.
and actually this is a little bit cheaper than the Telecaster. This one is only going to cost you £300 of English money, which is insane, really. So
That looks like it's a Chili Peppers machine. I feel like I want to play some chilies
well,
on
I
it.
tell you who. Again, one of my favourite bands of recent times, Biffy Clyro.
Yeah.
The guitar player from there actually plays his own Squier kind of signature Strat, and it's in Fiesta Red, so it probably doesn't look a whole heap different to this. But you know, I tell you, that's real testament to the quality of these guitars when you have a band like Biffy Clyro. You know, the guy's sold a
Jeff
million
Beck
albums.
plays Squiers as well.
He had an Esquire, which was the very early, like a really, really old one, you know, 60-year-old one or something. Who else sort of famous has played Squier? I know Jeff Healey used to play
Wow, he's
Squier
genius.
stuff. Dan Davies told me he has a Squier Strat.
Dan Davies has a Squier Strat in Fiesta.
I'm sure there's heaps of guys like that, but I think this is very, very cool.
bloke, can you tune this guitar for me?
You don't say it's gone out of tune now, has it?
I don't know, I'm guessing it might have done, but it might not have
It
done.
might not have done.
I might have done. Let's just have a look. Let's have a look.
Should we have an ad break?
Yes, it's still in tune.
That's amazing.
That's how incredible Squiers are. That's the Strat sound, isn't it? That's what.
Obviously, again on a 50s Strat, this would have just had a 3-way switch. So, and again, just completely by coincidence, on the 3-way switches that Fender used to use, you could actually wodge it in between the two settings.
I remember you saying that, yeah.
Yeah,
that's really interesting.
And that's how they got the sort of the out of phase sound. And then Fender, so many guitar players went, oh, I really like that sound, Eric. So Fender redesigned the switch to actually give you the 5 positions.
So you could just kind of hold it in between, and it would give you that in between.
It would
sound.
just sort of balance. I mean, you can kind of just sort of. Obviously, if you just knocked it very slightly, it would.
And you could do that with the Telecaster now.
Well, the Telly's at 3
so.
anyway, so no. But yeah, I mean, you can kind of see that's the sort of wodged position, but it wants to sort of click. But that's what they used to do to get that sort of out face sound. There's your little video. Hope you've enjoyed it. Come to the Andertons website if you want to find out more about these guitars, or of course if you want to buy one, because we ship these all over Europe, no problemo. And so yeah, just to recap, this is the classic vibe 50s Telecaster in a butterscotch blonde with a black scratch plate, and this is the classic vibe 50s Stratocaster in Fiesta red.
Yeah, just a quick note, nice thick scratch plates.
Yeah.
These are thicker than ordinary.
Again, do you want more Fender trivia?
I need more Fender trivia, Lee.
Again, the 50s ones would have had a single ply scratch plate, but it was a single ply. If you don't know what I mean, it's just one piece of plastic, and it was very thin. And if you look on a 60s Strat, you'll notice they're 3-ply scratch plates. Normally they go white, black, white in the ply. And the reason they did that was that the original single ply scratch plates used to bow quite badly over time, so you'd get big kind of gaps between the pickguard and the body. And the 3-ply ones were thicker, so they didn't bow. So this is actually the same thickness as a 3-ply plate,
but it's a 1-ply.
But it's 1-ply, so it won't bow because it's nice and thick. But yeah, it's all kind of, again, it's in keeping with how it would have been in the 50s.
I love these guitars. I think they're fantastic.
They're super value, aren't they?
Bearing in mind how affordable they are, it wouldn't take a lot to whack in some, branded pickups, bare knuckle it up, maybe a bit of DiMarzio love, and you've got fantastic guitar.
That's superb, isn't it?
Yes.
Did you restring this one?
No.
Which means?
They come fitted with D'Addario love.
I can't say that for absolute guarantee, because I would have thought Fender put Fender strings on their guitars, but this one has definitely got D'Addario strings on it. What about that one?
This one doesn't. Oh, no, hold on. Yes, it does. Yeah, they come with D'Addarios.
Well, we won't guarantee that, but these two certainly do. So if you buy one very, very quickly, you might get this one, in which case it's... apart from Chappers has got it. So there we go. That's it. See you next time.
Bye.